Pathetic interns like you should keep their heads down instead of pretending they belong with people who actually matter here.
I'm standing in a common area. I haven't bothered anyone, and I'm not looking for trouble.
Trouble? You're temporary help wearing a cheap badge, so stop acting like anyone here owes you respect.
If humiliating new employees makes you feel important, then go ahead and make sure everyone gets a good look.
Oh, they're watching. Maybe this will finally teach you what happens when an intern forgets exactly where he belongs.
The executive lifted his glass and deliberately poured the entire drink over the intern's head, as employees behind them burst into laughter. The intern didn't flinch. He turned slowly and looked directly at him.
Now clean yourself up and get out before I call security and make this even more embarrassing for you.
The executive had no idea the intern he had just humiliated would be sitting in the CEO's chair that same morning. The glass doors of Halcyon Systems gleamed under the morning sun as Malik Carter stepped inside, his denim jacket casual against the polished marble lobby. The temporary intern badge clipped to his pocket felt deliberately wrong, a small deception that would reveal everything he needed to know about this company. Board Chair Evelyn Price had arranged this morning carefully. "See them as they really are," she'd said during their private meeting yesterday, "before they know who you are, before they start pretending." Malik moved through the elevator crowds, observing. Employees hurried past with tight faces. Conversation stopped when certain people approached. The tension felt thick enough to cut. The executive floor buzzed with Monday morning energy. Malik followed the scent of coffee toward a gleaming station where several employees clustered around expensive machines. Their suits looked sharp. Their voices carried confidence. These were the people who ran things. "Well, well, fresh meat." The voice cut through the coffee station chatter like a blade. Grant Mercer stood near the premium espresso machine, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile cold as winter. Everything about him screamed power, from his tailored suit to the way other employees stepped back when he spoke. Grant's eyes locked on Malik's intern badge. His smile grew wider, meaner. "You picked the wrong morning to start, kid." Grant's voice carried across the station, drawing attention. "Monday's when real work gets done around here." Malik selected a simple black coffee from the regular machine. He kept his movements calm, deliberate. Years of acquiring failing companies had taught him patience. Let people show you who they really are before you show them who you are. "Hey, intern boy." Grant snapped his fingers like summoning a dog. "I need 2 cappuccinos and a Danish." Executive assistant called in sick. The coffee station went quiet. Several employees turned to watch. Malik could feel their eyes measuring him, waiting to see if the new guy would fold immediately. "I'm just here for coffee," Malik said quietly. Grant's eyebrows shot up. "Just here for coffee?" He looked around at the watching faces, performing now. Did everyone hear that? The intern thinks he gets to choose his assignments. Nervous laughter rippled through the group. Malik recognized the sound. Fear disguised as humor. These people had seen this show before. "Maybe you didn't understand?" Grant stepped closer, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Interns don't get to have opinions here. Interns do what they're told, when they're told." Malik took a sip of his coffee. Is this how interns are normally treated at Halcyon? The question hung in the air like smoke. Grant's face darkened. The watching employees shifted uncomfortably, sensing something changing in the dynamic they'd expected. "Normal?" Grant's voice rose again, playing to his audience. "What's normal is showing respect to your superiors. What's normal is understanding your place. What's not normal is some punk kid in a denim jacket questioning company culture on his first day." More employees had gathered now. The coffee station felt like a stage, with Grant as the star performer and Malik as his unwilling prop. "You want to know what's normal around here?" Grant reached out and plucked the coffee cup from Malik's hand. "This is normal." Time slowed as Grant tilted the cup above Malik's head. The hot coffee splashed down over his hair, soaking into his jacket, dripping onto the marble floor. The liquid was warm against his scalp, bitter against his lips. The watching employees erupted. Some gasped. Others laughed. That same nervous laughter, but louder now, encouraged by Grant's display of dominance. A few pulled out phones, capturing the moment. "Welcome to Halcyon Systems," Grant announced, spreading his arms wide like a ringmaster, "where interns learn their place from day one." Malik stood perfectly still as coffee dripped from his chin. Above them, he noticed the security cameras mounted near the ceiling, their red lights blinking steadily. Everything was being recorded. Footsteps approached from behind. Malik turned to see a woman in her 40s hurrying toward them, her face pale with shock. The nameplate on her blazer read, "Denise Walker, HR Director." She'd arrived just seconds too late to stop what happened, but early enough to see the aftermath. Malik wiped coffee from his face with the back of his hand. He looked directly at Grant, his voice calm and clear. "I wanted to know what this company was like before anyone knew my name." Denise Walker's heels clicked against the marble floor as she guided Malik toward a nearby conference room, her face flushed with embarrassment and concern. Coffee still dripped from his jacket, leaving a trail of dark spots behind them. "I am so sorry," she whispered, glancing back nervously. "That should never have happened. Never." Grant followed close behind, his chest puffed out with satisfaction. The small crowd at the coffee station had dispersed, but he could still hear whispers and see phones being tucked away. Perfect. Word would spread quickly about what happened to interns who didn't know their place. The conference room door closed behind them with a soft click. Denise immediately grabbed a box of tissues from the side table and offered it to Malik. "Thank you." Malik took the tissues but didn't immediately use them. Instead, he turned to face Grant directly. "Is this normal procedure when an employee has concerns about workplace treatment?" Grant's laugh was sharp and ugly. "Employee? Kid, you're an intern, and apparently not a very bright one." He turned to Denise, his voice taking on an authoritative tone. "I want him terminated before lunch. Insubordination on the first day. Complete lack of respect for company hierarchy." Denise's hands trembled slightly as she pulled out her phone. "I need to document what happened first. There are procedures." "Procedures?" Grant stepped closer to her desk. "The procedure is simple. Fire the troublemaker. Send a message to the other interns about what happens when they get mouthy." Malik dabbed at the coffee on his face, his movements deliberate and calm. "Denise, I'd like you to document today's incident completely. The security footage from the coffee station, the badge access records showing who was present, witness statements, if possible." Grant's face darkened. "You think anyone's going to waste time investigating some spilled coffee? You think anyone important cares about one intern's hurt feelings?" "Company policy requires documentation of workplace incidents," Malik replied evenly, "even involving interns." "Company policy?" Grant's voice rose. "I've been running operations here for 8 years. I know what policies matter and which ones don't. And trust me, kid, policies protecting interns who can't follow simple orders don't matter." Denise looked between the two men, her professional training warring with years of witnessing Grant's behavior. She'd seen this pattern before, too many times. "The footage will show exactly what happened," Malik continued, ignoring Grant's growing agitation. "Badge records will confirm who had access to that area at the time. HR files will show if this is part of a larger pattern." "Pattern?" Grant laughed again, but there was less humor in it now. "The only pattern here is interns coming and going. They wash out, they quit, they move on. Nobody remembers their names a month later. Nobody cares." Before Denise could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID made her straighten immediately. Evelyn Price, board chair. Ms. Price? Yes, I understand. Right away. She ended the call, her face pale. I need to contact all senior executives immediately. Emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. Grant's demeanor shifted instantly. Board meetings meant serious business, usually financing discussions or major operational decisions. His territory. Finally, he said, straightening his tie. Probably the Patterson acquisition falling through. I told them that timeline was too aggressive. He looked at Malik with renewed contempt. Don't worry, intern. I'll make sure to mention your attitude problem during the meeting. Your internship will be over before dinner. Denise began making calls, her voice professional but strained. As she spoke to each executive, Malik noticed her stealing glances at a small notebook partially hidden beneath other papers on her desk. When she finished the calls, Malik moved closer to her desk. Have there been other complaints about Mr. Mercer's treatment of employees? Denise's eyes darted toward Grant, who was checking his phone with obvious satisfaction. There have been incidents, she said carefully, but complaints have a way of disappearing from our official files. Disappearing? System glitches, misfiled paperwork, administrative errors. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But I kept private notes, report numbers, dates, witness names. I was afraid this might happen. Grant looked up from his phone, smirking. Still here, intern? Don't worry. After this board meeting, your employment status will be permanently resolved. Malik met Denise's eyes steadily. Don't reveal who I am yet. Let him enter that boardroom believing he still controls the room. The boardroom's polished mahogany table reflected the overhead lights as Grant strode in with the confidence of a man who owned the space. Several senior managers followed behind him, their expensive suits and practiced expressions radiating authority. Malik entered last, still wearing his coffee-stained shirt and the temporary intern badge that dangled from a cheap lanyard. Grant took his usual seat 3 chairs down from the head of the table, immediately launching into his complaint before anyone else could speak. Before we address whatever crisis brought us here, I need security to handle a personnel issue. He pointed directly at Malik. This intern has been insubordinate all morning. Disrespectful, argumentative, completely inappropriate behavior. The security guards stationed near the door stepped forward, hands moving toward their radios. Several managers turned to look at Malik, with expressions ranging from confusion to mild annoyance. He disrupted the entire coffee break, Grant continued, his voice growing louder and more indignant. Questioned my authority in front of multiple employees. Made accusations about company culture. This kind of behavior sets a dangerous precedent for other interns. One of the guards approached Malik. Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me. Stop. Evelyn Price's voice cut through the room like a blade. She stood at the far end of the table, her silver hair perfectly styled, her navy suit immaculate. Every person in that room understood the weight of her authority as board chair. Security, return to your positions. The guards hesitated, looking between Grant and Evelyn. Grant's face flushed red. Evelyn, with all due respect, this is a simple disciplinary matter. The intern needs to be removed before— Mr. Carter, Evelyn interrupted, her eyes fixed on Malik. Please take your seat. She gestured toward the chair at the head of the table. The CEO's chair. The room fell completely silent. Grant's mouth opened, then closed. The managers exchanged bewildered glances. One of them started to object, but Evelyn's raised hand silenced him immediately. Malik walked past the intern seating area along the wall. He walked past the junior executive chairs. He walked past Grant's seat, noting how the man's face had gone from red to pale in the span of seconds. Malik pulled out the high-backed leather chair at the head of the conference table and sat down. Ladies and gentlemen, Evelyn announced, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I present Malik Carter, who completed acquisition of controlling ownership in Halcyon Systems through our restructuring agreement. Effective this morning, Mr. Carter is our new Chief Executive Officer." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Grant's hands gripped the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Two managers looked physically ill. Another was frantically scrolling through emails on his phone, as if searching for some explanation that made sense. Malik adjusted the temporary badge still hanging from his neck, then looked directly at Grant. "I accepted this intern identification only to observe our workplace culture before my formal introduction. I wanted to understand how Halcyon Systems treats its employees when they believe no one important is watching." Grant found his voice, though it came out strained. "This is unprecedented. The board should have been notified." "The board was notified," Evelyn said crisply. "The acquisition agreement was finalized 3 days ago. The announcement was scheduled for this morning." Malik leaned forward slightly. "I won't be terminating anyone today. Instead, I'm announcing a comprehensive 30-day leadership review. Every management position will be evaluated based on employee treatment, performance metrics, and adherence to company policies." One of the managers shifted nervously. "Sir, our current systems will be preserved exactly as they are," Malik interrupted. "Effective immediately, I'm ordering preservation of all HR files, security footage, and employee records. No deletion privileges will be honored without direct CEO authorization." Grant's forced smile looked like it had been carved into his face with a knife. "Congratulations, Malik. Truly. Though I should mention," his voice took on a warning tone, "the board still controls major financing decisions. Operational authority has its limits." He paused, letting the threat sink in. "And you've just made some very powerful enemies before your first lunch as CEO." The CEO office still smelled like Grant's expensive cologne. Malik opened both windows, letting the afternoon air clear out the lingering scent of his predecessor's arrogance. The mahogany desk was littered with financial reports and half-empty coffee cups. A framed photo showed Grant shaking hands with some politician at a charity event. Malik swept everything into the trash. 20 minutes later, Denise Walker knocked on the doorframe. Her arms clutched a thick manila folder against her chest like armor. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Carter? Please, sit down." Malik gestured toward the chairs across from his desk. "And it's Malik." Evelyn Price entered behind Denise, carrying her own briefcase. She closed the door firmly and took the other chair. "We need to discuss the scope of your investigation." Denise opened her folder with trembling hands. "I've been keeping records for 2 years. Informal records, numbers and dates, mostly." She spread several handwritten pages across the desk. Each page contained neat columns, complaint numbers, employee names, dates, brief descriptions. Malik scanned the entries, his jaw tightening with each line. 17 harassment complaints involving Grant or his direct reports, Denise explained. 9 unpaid overtime disputes that were mysteriously resolved without documentation. 12 performance evaluations that dropped suddenly after employees filed grievances. Malik pointed to one entry. "What's this notation here? Retaliatory transfers. 3 interns moved to different departments within days of reporting inappropriate behavior. 2 quit within a month." Evelyn leaned forward. "Where are the original complaint files?" "That's the problem." Denise's voice dropped to a whisper. "Official HR records show only 3 formal complaints in the same period. Everything else was classified as informal coaching or personality conflicts." Malik felt his anger building, but kept his voice steady. "You documented this knowing it could cost you your job?" "Someone had to." Denise met his eyes. "These people deserved better than what they got." "Here's what we're going to do," Malik said. "Every allegation on these pages gets matched to original records, payroll data, security badge access logs, email timestamps, video footage. If someone worked unpaid overtime, the entry logs will prove it. If evaluations were altered, the system will show revision dates. He turned to Evelyn. I need board authorization to freeze all personnel records effective immediately. Already done. Evelyn pulled a signed document from her briefcase. Complete preservation order, no deletions, modifications, or transfers without your direct approval. Denise looked relieved for the first time since entering the office. The coffee station incident is preserved on building security servers. Grant doesn't have administrative access to those systems. Malik's phone buzzed with an urgent text, then another. Department heads were messaging him directly, their tone increasingly hostile. Something's wrong. He scrolled through the messages. 3 different managers are asking why I'm planning mass terminations. Where would they get that idea? Evelyn's expression darkened. Grant's been busy. The door burst open without a knock. Grant strode in, his face flushed and his tie loosened. Malik, we need to talk. Now. You don't work for me yet, Malik replied calmly. Make an appointment. The entire leadership team is panicking because you're apparently planning to fire half the company by Friday. Grant's voice rose with each word. Department heads are being told not to cooperate with HR requests. People are updating their resumes. Denise gathered her papers protectively. I never said anything about mass firings. But someone did. Grant pointed an accusing finger at Malik. This investigation of yours is destroying morale before you've even started. Malik stood slowly. Get out of my office. This isn't over. Grant backed toward the door. The Finance Committee meets Tuesday morning, 7:30 sharp. We'll see how much authority you really have. After he left, Malik immediately drafted a company-wide email. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. All Halcyon Systems employees. Effective immediately, any employee who provides information during the leadership review process is protected from retaliation under direct CEO authority. No transfers, schedule changes, performance modifications, or disciplinary actions may be taken without written CEO approval. This protection extends to all conversations with HR, security, or external auditors. Malik Carter, CEO. He hit send and watched the message appear in every company inbox within seconds. Denise smiled for the first time all day. That should stop the panic. Evelyn checked her phone and frowned. The Finance Committee meeting Grant mentioned, it's already been scheduled. Emergency session to discuss operational concerns regarding new leadership decisions. Malik's calm expression never changed, but his hands clenched into fists under the desk. The conference room lights cast harsh shadows across the mahogany table as the 3 of them spread documents like battle plans. Malik's coffee had gone cold hours ago. Denise sat hunched over her laptop, cross-referencing her private notes with the official HR database. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, then stopped. They're gone. Her voice was barely audible. Evelyn looked up from her own stack of papers. What's gone? Case numbers HR 2021-0847, HR 2022-0193, HR 2022-0456. Denise's face had gone pale. 3 sexual harassment complaints involving Grant's department heads. I have the reference numbers in my personal log, but when I searched the official system, she turned her laptop screen toward them. The search results showed empty fields. File not found, Malik read aloud. All 3? And more. Denise scrolled through her notes. 12 complaints total. The system shows they never existed, but I documented every one when employees submitted them. Malik felt his jaw tighten. When were they deleted? The audit trail only goes back 90 days, but based on my notes, these files were active when I referenced them last spring. Denise looked directly at Malik. Someone cleaned house before you arrived. Evelyn set down her pen. Grant knew about the acquisition for weeks before the announcement. He had time to prepare. This isn't just about protecting his reputation, Malik said. He's destroying evidence of systematic abuse. Evelyn pulled out a thin folder marked with the corporate logo. Speaking of systematic problems, we need to discuss the Finance Committee meeting. She opened the folder to reveal headshots and brief biographies of the board members. Directors Morrison and Zhang. She pointed to their photos. Both invested heavily in Halcyon before the restructuring. Grant negotiated their original board positions and maintains close relationships with their investment groups. Malik studied the photos. How close? Morrison's venture capital firm provided bridge financing during last year's cash flow crisis. Zhang's family trust owns preferred shares worth $8 million. Evelyn's tone was matter-of-fact. Grant arranged both deals. And they vote tomorrow morning on my operational authority. Correct. If Morrison and Zhang support Grant's position that your reforms are destabilizing the business, they can strip your day-to-day management powers pending the full board review. Malik leaned back in his chair. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. So Grant doesn't just bully employees. He's positioned himself as essential to the company's financing. Cross him, and he threatens to torpedo investor relationships. That's how he survived this long, Evelyn confirmed. Previous management couldn't remove him without risking their credit agreements. Denise closed her laptop with a sharp click. The deleted complaints prove he's been planning this defense for months. Clean up the obvious evidence, then claim anyone investigating him is being reckless with company stability. Malik stood and walked to the window overlooking the parking garage. Most employees had left hours ago, but security lights illuminated the empty spaces where cars should have been. The building felt hollow. I want an independent audit, he said without turning around. Full forensic review of HR record deletions, payroll adjustments, and executive system access logs. The audit firm from the acquisition is still under contract, Evelyn replied. They have clearance to examine any company records. How long for preliminary findings? 72 hours for database analysis, longer for detailed reconstruction. Malik nodded. Do it. Full authorization. I want to know every file that was deleted, every record that was modified, and every access log that shows who made the changes. Evelyn gathered her papers. I should suspend Grant immediately. Prevent him from destroying more evidence. No? Malik's response was immediate. He'll claim retaliation. Say I'm targeting him personally because of the coffee incident. The board will side with him if we move without ironclad proof. Then we wait until after the Finance Committee meeting? We wait until the audit proves what we already know. Malik turned back to face them. Grant thinks he controls this company through fear and intimidation. Tomorrow morning, he's going to test whether that includes controlling me. Denise packed her private log into her briefcase. What if Morrison and Zhang vote with him? Malik straightened his shoulders. Then we'll find out how much power a CEO really has when the board decides he's inconvenient. The conference room fell quiet, except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Outside, the parking garage remained empty. By morning, those spaces would fill with employees returning to a building where their new CEO might no longer have the authority to protect them. Malik gathered his jacket from the back of his chair. The intern badge was still clipped to the pocket, a reminder of how this had all started. Tomorrow, Grant would try to use Halcyon's own board to put the intern CEO back in his place. The building's automatic locks engaged as they left through the main entrance. Malik walked to his car, knowing the CEO reveal had changed nothing permanently. Grant's system was still intact, still dangerous, still protected by the same financial relationships that made him untouchable. By morning, they would all find out whether ownership meant anything when power had already been distributed to those who knew how to use it. The Finance Committee meeting began at 7:30, before most employees arrived. Malik entered the executive conference room to find Grant already seated with Morrison and Zhang, papers spread across the polished table like battle plans. Gentlemen, Grant said without looking up, I've prepared documentation showing how Malik's investigation is disrupting normal operations. Morrison, a thin man with silver hair, adjusted his glasses. The employees seem unsettled. Several department heads have expressed concerns about productivity. Because they're worried about being held accountable, Malik replied, taking his seat at the head of the table. That's not disruption. That's overdue. Zhang leaned forward. Grant says you're conducting interviews that feel like interrogations. Employees are afraid to make decisions without checking with you first. I'm reviewing how decisions were made before I arrived. Malik opened his laptop. Specifically, how certain employees were treated when leadership thought nobody was watching. Grant's jaw tightened. This is exactly what I warned you about. Malik is fixated on minor workplace incidents instead of focusing on business operations. Minor incidents. Malik clicked play on the video file. The conference room screen filled with security footage from the coffee station. Morrison watched Grant snatch the coffee cup from Malik's hands. Zhang's expression hardened as the liquid poured over Malik's head while employees laughed and applauded. "This is your idea of leadership?" Morrison asked Grant. "He was just an intern," Grant snapped. "I didn't know who he was." "That's the problem." Malik paused the video. "You humiliated someone because you thought they couldn't fight back. What else have you done when you believed nobody important was watching?" Grant stood abruptly. "You're using this footage to embarrass me instead of focusing on legitimate business concerns. My relationships with investors like Morrison and Zhang are what kept this company solvent during the acquisition." "Your relationships don't give you the right to abuse employees," Zhang replied coldly. "That behavior reflects poorly on all our reputations." Morrison nodded. "The video shows a serious judgment problem. Someone who treats subordinates this way can't be trusted with personnel decisions." Malik pulled out Denise's report. The HR documentation shows this wasn't isolated. Grant has systematically retaliated against employees who filed complaints, manipulated performance evaluations, and created a culture where intimidation was considered normal management. "Those allegations haven't been proven," Grant protested. "You're making personnel decisions based on accusations instead of evidence. The evidence is being compiled by an independent audit." Malik closed the laptop. "Until that's complete, I'm removing your authority over intern supervision and junior staff evaluations. All disciplinary actions require HR approval going forward." Grant's face flushed red. "You can't strip my management responsibilities without board authorization." "I can restructure reporting lines to protect employees from retaliation," Malik replied, "which is exactly what I'm doing." Evelyn entered carrying additional documentation. The board voted to support interim protective measures during active investigations. "Grant, you'll receive written notification of the adjusted responsibilities this morning." "This is retaliation," Grant said, his voice rising. "You're punishing me for questioning your leadership capabilities." Morrison shook his head. "We're supporting reasonable precautions while serious allegations are investigated. The video alone justifies removing your supervision over vulnerable employees." Zhang gathered his papers. "Grant, your behavior in that footage was unprofessional and cruel. If you can't understand why that's problematic, you shouldn't be managing anyone." Grant turned to Malik with undisguised fury. "You think you've won something here? I've been protecting this company's financial relationships for years, while you've been playing with Daddy's money." "The real business risk," Malik replied calmly, "is a leader who behaves differently when he thinks nobody important is watching. Investors want stability, not someone who creates liability through harassment and retaliation." The meeting concluded with Grant storming out, his face twisted with rage. Morrison and Zhang lingered briefly to discuss the audit timeline with Evelyn before departing for their own offices. Within an hour, Malik received a formal board notice from Grant demanding comprehensive financial projections for the 30-day review period, complete operational budgets, and detailed cost analysis of all investigative activities. The document carried Morrison and Zhang's signatures as co-sponsors, suggesting Grant had moved quickly to leverage his remaining board relationships. Tuesday morning arrived with tension crackling through Halcyon's polished hallways. Malik walked directly from the conference room to the open office area where junior analysts hunched over their computers, their shoulders tight with stress. He pulled an empty chair to the workspace cluster nearest the coffee station, the same spot where Grant had humiliated him just days earlier. "Mind if I work here today?" Malik asked the three analysts sharing the pod. Sarah, a recent graduate with dark circles under her eyes, glanced nervously at her colleagues. "You don't have to sit with us, Mr. Carter. We know you have important CEO stuff to do." "This is important CEO stuff." Malik opened his laptop. "I need to understand how work actually gets done here. Not how it looks in reports, but how it really happens." The analysts exchanged uncertain looks. During the coffee incident, Sarah had clapped along with everyone else. Now she couldn't meet Malik's eyes. Across the office, Denise began her systematic employee interviews. She'd reserved Conference Room B for the entire week, creating a steady stream of workers moving in and out with file folders and documentation. "What project are you working on?" Malik asked Tom, a young analyst whose computer screen showed complex financial models. "Quarterly projections for the Morrison account," Tom replied cautiously. "But I'm running behind because I had to redo the calculations 3 times. My manager keeps changing the parameters." "Why?" Tom's voice dropped. "He says my numbers don't match Grant's expectations, but when I adjust them to match, they don't align with the actual data anymore." Malik leaned closer. "Show me the original calculations." For the next hour, Malik worked beside the analysts while they explained their projects. The pattern became clear quickly. Junior employees were producing accurate work that senior managers systematically altered to match predetermined conclusions. Sarah finally spoke up during a brief lull. "Mr. Carter, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When Grant poured that coffee on you, you didn't fight back or get angry. Why not?" Malik saved his work before answering. "Because angry people make mistakes. I needed to see who Grant really was when he thought he had power over someone helpless." "We laughed," Sarah whispered. "We actually laughed at you. You laughed because you've been taught that's how survival works here. Laugh along with whoever has power or become their next target." Tom shifted uncomfortably. It felt wrong, but Grant was watching. If we didn't laugh, he'd remember our faces. That's exactly the problem I'm trying to fix. Around noon, 2 employees approached Malik separately. The first, a junior accountant named Kevin, carried a thick folder. "I have payroll records," Kevin said quietly. "From the last 6 months, there are irregularities." Malik reviewed the documents while Kevin explained. 17 employees had logged overtime hours that were never paid. 12 had received sudden performance evaluation drops immediately after filing complaints with HR. "Who approved these changes?" Malik asked. "All the signatures trace back to Grant's department," Kevin replied. "Either him directly or managers reporting to him." The second employee, Maria from Data Analysis, provided similar documentation. Her evaluation had dropped from exceeds expectations to needs improvement 3 days after she questioned a budget allocation that seemed deliberately inflated. "I kept copies of everything," Maria explained, "because I knew something wasn't right." Malik photographed the documents and forwarded them to Denise immediately. Within an hour, she'd cross-referenced the information with her complaint number log. The matches were undeniable. Every complaint about workplace harassment or financial irregularities was followed by employment retaliation within 2 weeks. But Grant wasn't passive. By early afternoon, word spread that he'd issued new directives to his remaining managers. No employee discussions without written authorization. No document sharing outside official channels. All review requests must follow formal procedures that Grant's office would personally approve. Malik's response was immediate and decisive. He drafted CEO authorization letters for every employee, giving them explicit permission to participate in workplace reviews. Then he created a digital tracking system that logged every request, preventing Grant from quietly blocking information. Grant can't stop what he can't control, Malik explained to Denise during their afternoon check-in. The breakthrough came when Department Head Jennifer Walsh approached Malik directly. She'd been one of Grant's most reliable allies, but the mounting evidence had shaken her confidence. "I need to show you something," Walsh said, glancing around nervously, "about the intern program budgets." She produced records showing systematic fund diversions from intern training programs into management bonuses. Grant had been literally profiting from the mistreatment of junior employees. "I didn't know," Walsh insisted. "I just processed the transfers Grant authorized. But seeing the pattern now—" "You're doing the right thing," Malik assured her. Grant's counterattack arrived at 4:47 p.m. through Morrison's office. A formal memorandum marked urgent board review landed on Malik's desk, copied to all directors and major investors. The memo claimed Malik's investigation had already caused First National Bank to reconsider Halcyon's credit line renewal, threatening the company's operational stability and putting employee jobs at risk. Malik stared at Grant's financing memo, the words blurring together as their implications crystallized. The document painted a picture of financial instability directly caused by his investigation into workplace abuse. According to Grant's analysis, Malik's disruptive leadership changes had already spooked First National Bank into reconsidering Halcyon's critical credit line renewal. The timing couldn't be worse. Halcyon needed that funding to complete two major expansion projects that employed nearly 40% of their workforce. Evelyn knocked and entered without waiting for permission. Her face was grim as she set down her own copy of the memo. "How bad is this, really?" Malik asked directly. "The credit renewal is genuine," Evelyn confirmed, settling into the chair across from his desk. "We've been negotiating terms for 6 months. First National holds 60% of our operational credit, and losing them would force us to liquidate the Portland and Denver expansions immediately. That means laying off people. At least 50 employees, probably more." Malik felt the familiar weight of impossible choices. Cancel the investigation and let Grant's abuse continue, or risk destroying the livelihoods of innocent workers who had nothing to do with the company's toxic culture. "I'm not stopping the review," he said finally, "but I need you to verify the lender's actual position. Don't trust anything filtered through Grant's office." "Already planned," Evelyn replied. "I'll call Patricia Hendricks at First National directly. We've worked together for 8 years." After Evelyn left, Malik summoned Denise to review the external audit's preliminary findings. The results were damning but frustratingly incomplete. Executive-level credentials deleted 43 HR complaints over the past 7 months, Denise explained, spreading printouts across Malik's conference table. But the access was routed through a shared administrative account that multiple managers could use. Can't they trace which specific person logged in? The system wasn't designed for individual accountability. Anyone with administrative access could delete records without leaving a personal signature. Malik studied the timestamps. The deletions occurred systematically, usually within 48 hours of complaints being filed. Someone had been monitoring the HR database constantly, eliminating evidence before patterns could emerge. By 3:30, Grant had learned about the audit findings and immediately went on the offensive. He called an impromptu meeting with 3 board members, arguing that the deleted complaints proved Denise had failed to maintain proper HR controls. "Walker's incompetence created this mess," Grant declared when he confronted Malik directly afterward. Either she covered up legitimate problems, or she allowed the system to be compromised through negligence. Either way, she should be suspended immediately. That's convenient timing, Malik replied coldly. This isn't about timing. This is about accountability. Unless you're protecting Walker because she supports your investigation? Grant's accusation hung in the air like a challenge. He was gambling that Malik couldn't prove Denise's innocence without revealing information that might compromise the broader review. Malik opened his desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Denise Walker preserved complaint numbers for every deleted record, he announced, setting the folder between them. She kept this private log because she suspected the official system was being manipulated. Grant's confident expression faltered as Malik opened the folder, revealing page after page of handwritten complaint numbers, dates, and brief descriptions. She documented everything she couldn't officially investigate. Malik continued. When the computer records disappeared, her notes remained. That's not incompetence, Grant. That's someone who knew exactly what you were doing. You can't prove I deleted anything. Maybe not yet. But I can prove someone with executive access was systematically destroying evidence, and Denise was the only person trying to preserve it. Grant stormed out without responding, but his threat to suspend Denise died with his credibility. Evelyn returned an hour later with news that shifted everything into sharper focus. I spoke with Patricia Hendricks, she reported. First National hasn't withdrawn from negotiations, but they did request an emergency Wednesday meeting after receiving what Patricia called alarming financial projections from our executive team yesterday. Malik felt pieces clicking together in his mind. What kind of projections? Revenue forecasts showing massive losses from employee turnover and productivity drops, all attributed to your leadership changes. The pattern was becoming clear. Grant hadn't just used his power to retaliate against individual employees. He was now manipulating financial data to sabotage Malik's entire leadership, willing to risk the company's stability rather than accept accountability. The same abuse of power, just scaled up from personal cruelty to corporate sabotage. The Finance Committee meeting began at 8 o'clock sharp in the 6th floor boardroom. Malik had spent most of the night dissecting Grant's financial projections, finding problems that went beyond simple miscalculation. These revenue assumptions are missing critical data, Malik announced, spreading the corrected documents across the mahogany table. Grant's model shows a 30% productivity drop from leadership changes, but it doesn't account for the productivity gains we'll see when employees stop wasting time navigating toxic management. Grant straightened his tie and leaned back in his chair with practiced confidence. Those are conservative forecasts based on industry standards for organizational disruption. Any competent CEO would recognize that rapid culture changes create temporary instability. Temporary instability doesn't justify inflating training costs by 40%, Malik shot back, pointing to specific line items. Your projections assume we'll need 6 months of professional development for every employee affected by management changes. That's not conservative. That's deliberately pessimistic. Evelyn studied both sets of numbers, her experienced eye catching additional discrepancies. Grant, your model also excludes the cost savings from eliminating duplicate supervisory positions and the revenue protection from retaining talented employees who were planning to quit. We can't quantify retention benefits without solid data, Grant replied smoothly. I prefer to underestimate gains rather than promise results we can't deliver. Denise shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had compiled the actual turnover data Grant was ignoring, but she waited for Malik to address the manipulation directly. Conservative forecasting means using realistic assumptions, Malik said, his voice steady but cold. Your projections assume worst-case scenarios for every reform while ignoring measurable benefits we're already seeing. That's not conservative. That's sabotage, disguised as caution. Grant's polite mask slipped for just a moment. You're accusing me of deliberately damaging the company I've helped build for 7 years? I'm pointing out that your financial model serves your agenda rather than the company's interests. The room fell silent as both men stared across the table. Grant had built his reputation on financial expertise, and Malik was systematically dismantling that credibility in front of the committee members who had trusted Grant's judgment for years. Board member Patricia Wong cleared her throat. What safeguards can we implement to ensure future projections maintain objectivity? Malik had prepared for exactly this question. Every financial model will carry automatic version histories showing who made changes and when. Additionally, any projection affecting major business decisions will require dual approval from separate departments. That seems excessive, Grant protested. Financial modeling requires flexibility and professional judgment. Professional judgment doesn't require secrecy, Evelyn replied firmly. The version control system will actually protect our analysts by documenting their reasoning. The committee voted unanimously to implement Malik's safeguards, giving him another narrow victory in the ongoing power struggle. Grant's influence was being systematically reduced, but he showed no signs of retreating. As the financial discussion concluded, Denise received a text message from the external auditors. She glanced at her phone, then looked directly at Malik. The audit found something significant, she announced quietly. Grant's executive credentials initiated 47 database sessions that coincided exactly with HR complaint deletions over the past 6 months. Grant immediately went on the defensive. Administrative accounts are shared resources. Anyone with proper authorization could have accessed the system using those credentials. But the sessions occurred primarily during evening hours when most administrators had already left the building. Denise continued, reading from her phone. The timing patterns match your documented work schedule almost perfectly. Almost perfectly isn't proof of anything, Grant replied coldly. You're suggesting I stayed late to delete complaints, but correlation doesn't equal causation. Malik studied the preliminary data carefully. Grant was right about the legal standards for proving deliberate misconduct, but the pattern was damning enough to justify increased scrutiny. The evidence suggests misconduct without definitively proving it, Malik acknowledged, but it's sufficient to warrant enhanced oversight of all administrative access going forward. Grant's jaw tightened at the measured response. He had expected Malik to overreach with accusations he couldn't substantiate, giving Grant grounds to claim persecution. As they gathered their materials for the lender meeting, Grant stepped closer to Malik with a quiet warning. Owning the company means nothing if the board decides you're destroying it faster than you can reform it. The lender meeting convened in Halcyon's main conference room 30 minutes after the Finance Committee concluded. Representatives from Metropolitan Capital sat across from Malik, Evelyn, and Grant, their expressions carefully neutral as they reviewed the competing financial projections. Mr. Carter, your predecessor submitted concerning forecasts about operational stability under new management, said lead representative Sarah Mitchell. These projections suggest significant cash flow disruptions during your leadership transition. Malik opened his laptop and displayed the corrected numbers on the room's main screen. Ms. Mitchell, those projections contain several methodological errors that overstate transition costs and underestimate revenue protection. He clicked through the version history, showing exactly when Grant's assumptions had been modified. The original analysis projected 12% turnover during management changes. Mr. Mercer's revision increased that to 38% without supporting data. Sarah studied the timestamps carefully. These modifications were made yesterday evening? Correct. After I submitted my initial review, but before this meeting was scheduled. Grant shifted uncomfortably but maintained his composure. I updated the projections based on employee feedback, suggesting higher anxiety about organizational changes. What employee feedback? Malik asked directly. Grant hesitated. Informal conversations with department heads. Which department heads specifically? I don't keep detailed records of casual workplace discussions. Sarah exchanged glances with her colleague. Mr. Mercer, your projections assume Halcyon will require external consulting for basic management functions. Is there a documented skills gap that justifies this assumption? Grant fumbled for an answer. Leadership transitions always create knowledge gaps that require professional support. But Mr. Carter's experience includes successfully restructuring 3 comparable companies, Sarah continued. Your projections ignore his demonstrated competencies entirely. Malik leaned forward. Ms. Mitchell, Halcyon remains profitable with strong market position and diversified revenue streams. The leadership review addresses cultural issues without disrupting core operations. He displayed current metrics, showing stable client relationships, maintained delivery schedules, and improved employee satisfaction scores since his arrival. These numbers contradict the instability narrative in Mr. Mercer's analysis, Sarah observed. Because that narrative serves personal interests rather than financial accuracy, Malik replied calmly. The meeting concluded with Metropolitan Capital agreeing to continue credit discussions, effectively rejecting Grant's claim that Malik's reforms threatened immediate financial collapse. Back at headquarters, Denise intercepted Malik in the corridor with urgent news. The forensic review found backups, she said quietly. 3 deleted complaints can be fully reconstructed from email acknowledgments and payroll records I preserved before their removal. Malik stopped walking. Reconstructed how completely? Names, dates, specific allegations, and documentation proving the complaints were filed properly before disappearing from official records. When can we present them? Tomorrow morning. The evidence is already compiled. That afternoon, Grant appeared in Malik's office doorway without knocking. His usual confidence seemed strained, and he closed the door behind him before speaking. Malik, we need to discuss a practical solution to this situation. I'm listening. Grant sat down across from Malik's desk. You've made your point about accountability and cultural change. Everyone understands you're serious about reform. And? End the investigation now. Restore my operational authority. I'll publicly support your CEO transition and work within whatever new policies you establish. Malik studied Grant's face, recognizing desperation beneath the diplomatic language. You're asking me to ignore documented misconduct in exchange for your cooperation. I'm offering you stability. The board respects my institutional knowledge. My endorsement would eliminate remaining resistance to your leadership. At what cost? No cost, just practical compromise between experienced executives. Malik leaned back in his chair. Grant, you humiliated me in front of colleagues. You manipulated financial data to undermine my authority. You deleted employee complaints to protect your reputation. Business conflicts require pragmatic solutions. This isn't a business conflict. This is about basic human dignity. Grant's diplomatic mask slipped completely. Everything in corporate leadership is negotiable, Malik. Dignity, respect, authority. They're all just bargaining chips in larger games. Malik's voice remained steady. Dignity is not something I will bargain away. Not mine, not anyone else's who works here. Grant stared at him for a long moment, then stood without responding. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle, but left without issuing another threat. That evening, Evelyn called Malik with unexpected news. The board scheduled a formal vote for tomorrow morning, she said. They're prepared to officially endorse your reform initiative. For the first time since arriving at Halcyon, Malik allowed himself to believe victory was within reach. Thursday morning arrived with unusual tension crackling through Halcyon's corridors. Employees gathered in clusters outside the boardroom, whispering about the meeting that would decide their company's future. Many had witnessed Grant's humiliation of Malik weeks earlier. Now they waited to see justice finally served. Malik walked past the anxious faces, carrying a thick folder of evidence. His calm expression revealed nothing of the anticipation building inside him. Evelyn nodded as he entered the boardroom where 7 directors sat around the polished conference table. "Good morning," Malik said, taking his seat at the head. "I believe everyone has reviewed the preliminary findings." Grant occupied his usual chair, but his typical arrogance seemed muted. Dark circles under his eyes suggested sleepless nights, and his normally perfect appearance looked slightly disheveled. "Mr. Carter, please present your evidence," Evelyn announced formally. Malik opened the folder methodically. First, the reconstructed employee complaints. He distributed copies showing deleted reports that documented Grant's verbal abuse, intimidation tactics, and retaliation against workers who challenged his authority. Director Thomas Williamson studied the documents carefully. These complaints were officially filed? Yes. Each includes timestamps, email acknowledgments, and payroll records confirming the complainant's employment status when incidents occurred. "And they were deliberately removed from our system?" asked Director Patricia Ross. Malik displayed access logs showing Grant's administrative credentials deleting files within hours of their submission. The digital footprint is unmistakable. Grant shifted uncomfortably. Those deletions were routine database maintenance. Outdated files get purged regularly. Routine maintenance doesn't target specific complaint categories while preserving other employee records from identical time periods, Malik replied evenly. He continued with financial evidence. Second, the corrected revenue projections. The authentic models showed Halcyon's stable market position and strong cash flow, directly contradicting Grant's manufactured crisis narrative. Director Ross frowned at Grant. "You presented fundamentally different numbers just 2 days ago." Grant's voice tightened. "Market conditions change rapidly. Conservative projections protect company interests. Conservative projections don't include fabricated consultant fees and imaginary operational disruptions," Director Williamson observed sharply. Malik methodically documented each manipulation, explaining how Grant had inflated costs, understated revenues, and created fictional scenarios to justify removing Malik from leadership. "These alterations weren't mistakes," Malik concluded. "They were calculated attempts to undermine legitimate reform efforts." Several directors exchanged disapproving glances. Grant's credibility was crumbling with each revelation. Evelyn leaned forward. "Given this evidence, I move to formally approve Mr. Carter's leadership review and permanently restructure Mr. Mercer's authority within established oversight protocols." "Seconded," Director Ross said immediately. Grant's face flushed red. "This is a rush to judgment based on circumstantial evidence and personal vendetta." "The evidence isn't circumstantial," Director Williamson replied coldly. "It's documented misconduct with clear digital trails." Just as the vote seemed certain, Grant reached into his briefcase and produced a manila envelope. "Before you make irreversible decisions, examine these newly discovered accounting irregularities." He distributed photocopies showing what appeared to be Malik's digital approvals for substantial consulting expenses and unauthorized fund transfers. The documents looked official, complete with electronic signatures and proper formatting. "Mr. Carter authorized these expenditures without board notification," Grant announced. He moved acquisition funds into personal consulting contracts while claiming to reduce unnecessary expenses. Director Ross studied the papers with growing concern. "Malik, did you approve these transactions?" Malik examined the documents carefully. They showed his name, his access credentials, and what looked like his digital signature authorizing payments to consulting firms he'd never heard of. "These approvals are fabricated," Malik said firmly. "I never authorized any of these transactions." Grant's confidence returned. The accounting department verified these approvals came through proper channels using Mr. Carter's executive access. Director Williamson looked troubled. The amounts are significant. If accurate, they represent serious governance violations. They're not accurate, Malik insisted. Someone created false documentation using my credentials. But Grant pressed his advantage. Directors, Mr. Carter claims every inconvenient document is fabricated while demanding we accept his allegations without question. This pattern suggests serious judgment issues. Director Ross wavered visibly. These accounting records do carry proper authentication codes. Because they were manufactured to look authentic, Malik replied, but uncertainty crept into several faces around the table. Grant continued his attack. Gentlemen, we cannot approve leadership changes while potential financial misconduct remains unresolved. Our fiduciary responsibility demands investigation. Director Williamson nodded reluctantly. He raises valid concerns. With the credit renewal still pending, any hint of financial irregularity could jeopardize our banking relationships. The momentum shifted dramatically. Directors who had seemed ready to support Malik began expressing doubts about proceeding without thorough authentication of the disputed records. I propose temporarily suspending Mr. Carter's operational authority pending forensic verification, Grant suggested. The board can assume direct oversight until these questions are resolved. Evelyn fought back. This appears to be manufactured evidence designed to delay legitimate accountability measures. Then authentication will prove that quickly, Grant replied smoothly. Honest leaders welcome scrutiny. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 4 directors supported temporary suspension while 3 opposed. Malik's operational control was stripped pending investigation. Grant received interim operating authority under board supervision. This is a serious mistake, Malik warned as the meeting concluded. You're rewarding documented misconduct while punishing reform efforts. But the decision stood. Grant had successfully turned the tables using the same manipulation tactics that built his power over years of unchallenged authority. Within an hour, Grant appeared in the company's main coffee area where he had humiliated Malik weeks earlier. Employees gathered nervously, sensing the changed dynamic. Grant's familiar arrogance returned in full force. Ladies and gentlemen, the intern experiment is officially over. His voice carried across the crowded space with unmistakable satisfaction. Real leadership has been restored. He gestured dismissively. Mr. Carter has been relieved of operational duties pending investigation of serious governance violations. Professional management will resume immediately. Several employees who had witnessed the coffee incident looked uncomfortable, but none dared challenge Grant's authority now that the board had restored his power. Meanwhile, security approached Malik at his office door. Sir, we need to escort you from the building and collect your executive access credentials. The victory he had almost achieved slipped away as Grant's retaliation succeeded beyond expectations. Malik handed over his executive access card to the security officer, but remained seated in his office chair. The guard looked confused. Sir, you need to leave the premises, the security officer said awkwardly. I'm still a board member and controlling shareholder, Malik replied calmly. The vote suspended my operational duties, not my ownership rights or board seat. Check the meeting minutes. The officer stepped outside to radio his supervisor. Within minutes, Evelyn appeared at Malik's door. The security team is correct about your access limitations, she said carefully, but you retain your board position and ownership interests. You can remain in the building, though your system privileges are suspended. Malik nodded. I understand the restrictions. After security departed, Evelyn closed the office door. This is a temporary setback. Grant's evidence looked suspicious to several directors, but the timing created doubt. The evidence is fabricated, Malik said firmly, but proving that without system access will be challenging. Evelyn sat down across from him. What safeguards did you establish before this happened? Malik pulled out a notepad where he'd written key decisions from his first week. Monday morning, I ordered comprehensive version histories preserved for all financial systems. Tuesday, I required security logs copied to independent servers. Wednesday, I authorized external audit access to authentication records. Those orders remain valid until formally revoked, Evelyn confirmed. Grant can't undo them through operational authority. 20 minutes later, Denise knocked on the door. She entered carrying a thick folder of printed documents. "I've been reviewing the accounting records Grant presented," she said, spreading papers across Malik's desk. "Something doesn't align properly." Malik studied the suspicious approvals. Each document showed his digital signature, access credentials, and proper formatting. But the timestamps caught his attention. "Look at these dates," he said, pointing to several entries. "These approvals are dated Monday and Tuesday morning." Denise nodded. "That's what I noticed. You didn't receive full operational credentials until Tuesday afternoon after the board vote." "Exactly," Malik confirmed. "I couldn't have authorized these transactions before receiving system access." Evelyn leaned forward. "The authentication logs should prove that timeline." Before they could continue, Grant appeared in the doorway with 2 security officers. "Ms. Walker, you're relieved of duties pending investigation of your role in recent irregularities." Denise stood her ground. "Under what authority?" "Operational necessity," Grant replied smugly. "We cannot have compromised personnel handling sensitive investigations." "The anti-retaliation protections I implemented Monday remain in effect," Malik interjected. "Ms. Walker cannot be suspended without documented cause and board approval." Grant's confidence wavered slightly. "This isn't retaliation. It's prudent personnel management." "Then present your documented cause to the board," Evelyn said firmly. "Until then, Ms. Walker retains her position under existing protection protocols." The security officers looked uncertain about their instructions. Grant realized he couldn't force the issue without board authorization. "This conversation will continue," he warned before leaving with visible frustration. Evelyn immediately pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the external auditing firm we retained Monday. They should have independent access to all the authentication systems." She dialed the number and put the call on speaker. "This is Evelyn Price from Halcyon Systems. We need urgent authentication verification of disputed financial approvals." The lead auditor's voice came through clearly. "Ms. Price, we've been monitoring your system since Monday per the board's authorization. We have complete authentication logs, access records, and transaction histories preserved outside company control. Can you verify the legitimacy of approvals dated Monday and Tuesday morning using Malik Carter's credentials?" Evelyn asked. "We can provide a complete analysis," the auditor confirmed. "Our preserved logs show all system access, credential usage, and approval timestamps for the entire week. How quickly can you deliver a definitive report?" "We can have comprehensive authentication results ready by Friday morning. Our independent servers captured everything in real time, so the evidence is irrefutable." Malik felt relief for the first time since the board vote. "The truth will come out." "Grant's manipulation succeeded temporarily," Denise observed, "but he can't falsify records that were preserved independently before he knew they'd be needed." Evelyn ended the call and looked at both of them. "Friday morning, we'll have proof that Grant fabricated evidence. The question is whether we can survive until then." Thursday afternoon stretched into evening as Malik, Evelyn, and Denise worked methodically through the evidence preserved before his suspension. They spread documents across the conference table in Evelyn's office, organizing everything by timestamp and source. "Look at this pattern," Denise said, pointing to the forged approvals Grant had presented. "These transactions follow the exact same administrative pathway we discovered earlier." She pulled out the HR complaint records they'd reviewed Tuesday. "Remember how the deleted complaints were processed through specific workstation sequences? These fake approvals use identical routing." Malik studied the technical details. Same login patterns, same approval chains, same digital signatures. Whoever deleted those complaints also created these false approvals, Denise confirmed. The system architecture is identical. Evelyn opened the acquisition agreement she'd retrieved from the board archives. This contract establishes precisely when your operational credentials became active, Malik. She flipped to the relevant section and read aloud. Full system access and approval authority shall commence following formal board confirmation, no earlier than Tuesday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But these disputed approvals are time-stamped Monday at 9:15 a.m. and Tuesday at 11 a.m., Malik observed. I couldn't have authorized anything before 2:30 Tuesday afternoon. The timeline proves Grant's evidence is fabricated, Denise concluded. You literally didn't have the credentials to make those approvals. Malik pulled out his notepad of decisions from Wednesday. The version history preservation I ordered should show when these records were actually created. He called the external auditors on Evelyn's secure line. This is Malik Carter. Can you trace when the disputed financial entries were actually entered into our systems? The lead auditor's voice was confident. Mr. Carter, our preserved version histories show something very interesting. Those entries weren't created on the dates they claim. When were they actually made? Wednesday evening between 8:30 and 9:45 p.m. Someone with executive-level access backdated them to appear earlier in the week. Evelyn leaned toward the phone. Can you identify which workstation was used? Executive Terminal 7 in the finance area. The same workstation that processed those deleted HR complaints Ms. Walker discovered. Denise nodded grimly. That's Grant's preferred terminal. He uses it for sensitive work because it has the highest security clearance. There's more, the auditor continued. The accounting projections Grant presented to discredit Mr. Carter were also altered Wednesday night using the same workstation sequence. He manufactured an entire case against me in one evening, Malik realized. Changed dates, created false approvals, modified financial projections. Before they could discuss further, Malik's phone buzzed with a company-wide message from Grant. Effective immediately, the leadership review process is paused pending resolution of recent irregularities. All personnel should focus on normal operations until further notice. He's trying to stop the investigation, Denise observed. Malik immediately responded with his own message to the board members. The evidence preservation order approved Monday remains active regardless of operational changes. All audit processes continue as authorized. Evelyn's phone rang within minutes. That was Director Martinez. Grant demanded the board halt your audit access, but I reminded them that evidence preservation can't be suspended during an active investigation. Grant's getting desperate, Malik noted. He knows the audit will expose everything. The auditor's voice returned through the speaker. We're now correlating workstation activity with the badge access records and security footage you ordered preserved Monday. The physical evidence should confirm who was actually using those terminals. How detailed is that correlation? Evelyn asked. We have badge swipes, camera timestamps, and system login records for every executive area access during the critical time periods. If someone used Grant's credentials, we'll know exactly who was physically present. Denise felt hopeful for the first time since the board vote. Grant can control daily operations, but he can't touch evidence that was preserved before he knew it would be needed. He thought suspending Malik would stop the investigation, Evelyn added, but the audit operates independently of company control. Malik reviewed their organized evidence. Tomorrow morning, we'll have proof of exactly who fabricated those records and when. That evening, the auditors called Evelyn with a final update. Ms. Price, our preserved records clearly identify who was physically present in the executive area during those critical workstation sessions. Our complete report will be ready first thing Friday morning. Will the evidence be conclusive? She asked. Absolutely. The correlation between badge records, security footage, and system access creates an undeniable timeline of who did what and when. Friday morning arrived with crisp autumn air filtering through the conference room windows. The emergency board meeting reconvened at exactly 9 o'clock. Malik sat calmly at the side table where he'd been relegated since Wednesday's vote. Grant occupied the head chair with obvious satisfaction. Evelyn shuffled papers at her position as board chair. Denise waited near the door with a folder of preserved complaint records. The other directors filed in silently. Their faces showed exhaustion from 3 days of corporate drama. "Before we address operational concerns," Evelyn announced, "the independent auditors have completed their evidence review. Their findings are critical to understanding Wednesday's accusations." Grant straightened in his chair. "I hope this audit confirms the financial irregularities I documented. Malik's reckless spending threatened our entire acquisition agreement." The lead auditor entered carrying a thick report and laptop computer. She connected to the conference room display without ceremony. "Our investigation focused on the disputed financial approvals and deleted HR records," she began. "The evidence timeline is conclusive." The screen showed a detailed chart. Timestamps, badge records, and system access logs filled multiple columns. First, the financial approvals attributed to Mr. Carter. These were actually created Wednesday evening between 8:30 and 9:45 p.m. using Executive Terminal 7 in the finance area. Grant's confident expression wavered slightly. "Terminal access can be shared during urgent situations, not according to your preserved security footage." The auditor clicked to video evidence. Mr. Mercer's badge accessed the executive area at 8:22 p.m. Wednesday. The cameras show him alone at Terminal 7 for the entire session. The footage was crystal clear. Grant typing methodically, checking papers, entering data with deliberate precision. The version histories prove these entries were backdated to appear earlier in the week, the auditor continued. Someone with executive privileges altered timestamps to create false approval records. Malik studied Grant's face. The arrogance was cracking into something more desperate. Additionally, the deleted HR complaint records Ms. Walker discovered were erased using the same workstation sequence. Our preserved backup shows Mr. Mercer accessed those files Tuesday evening after the board meeting where Mr. Carter announced the leadership review. Denise held up her folder. "I have the complaint numbers that prove these deletions targeted specific retaliation reports." The auditor displayed another timeline. The accounting projections Mr. Mercer presented to discredit Mr. Carter were also modified Wednesday night. The original numbers showed healthy financial performance. The altered versions created artificial shortfalls. "You're saying Grant manufactured an entire case against me in 2 evenings?" Malik asked quietly. "The evidence is undeniable. Terminal access, badge records, security footage, and version histories all confirm the same pattern of deliberate falsification." Grant finally spoke, his voice strained. "This is a setup. Someone else used my credentials." "Your badge was physically present during every session," the auditor replied. "The security cameras confirm your face, your clothes, your personal mannerisms. No one else accessed those areas during the critical time frames." Evelyn reviewed the displayed evidence. "Grant, you fabricated approvals to make Malik appear financially reckless. You deleted HR complaints to hide retaliation patterns. You altered accounting projections to support false accusations." "I acted to protect this company," Grant said defensively. "Malik is too young to understand the complexities we face. His reforms would have destroyed our financing relationships." Malik leaned forward. "You mean his reforms would have exposed how you've been abusing employees for years?" "The coffee incident Monday morning," Denise added. "You humiliated Malik because you thought he was powerless. When you discovered he owned the company, you couldn't accept that someone you'd treated like garbage now controlled your future." "The retaliatory performance evaluations," Malik continued. "The deleted complaint records, the financing scare tactics, the forged approval records. Everything came from your belief that powerless people could be controlled and evidence could be erased." Grant's face flushed red. "You have no idea what it takes to run a real business. I know it doesn't require pouring coffee on interns or deleting harassment complaints," Malik replied calmly. The other directors exchanged uncomfortable glances. The weight of Grant's systematic deception was becoming clear. Evelyn called for attention. "Based on this evidence, I'm calling an immediate vote to restore Malik Carter's full operational authority. All in favor of reinstating Mr. Carter as CEO with complete executive powers?" Every hand rose without hesitation. The vote was unanimous. "Motion carried," Evelyn announced. "Malik, your authority is fully restored." Malik stood slowly and walked to the head of the table. Grant remained seated, his face pale with defeat. "Thank you," Malik said to the directors. "Now, we need to address Grant's employment status, but this decision should be made in front of the leadership team he attempted to manipulate." The boardroom doors opened, and Malik walked directly toward the main elevator. His steps were measured, purposeful. Behind him, the directors followed in solemn formation. "Denise, please ask all managers and staff to gather in the coffee area immediately," Malik said as they reached the main floor. "Everyone who was present Monday morning needs to be there." Word spread quickly through the office. Employees abandoned their desks, their conversations hushed with nervous energy. Managers emerged from closed offices, their faces tight with uncertainty. The same coffee area that had witnessed Grant's public humiliation of Malik 4 days earlier began filling with the entire leadership team and most of the staff. Grant stood near the back, his usual commanding presence diminished. His allies clustered around him, but their loyalty looked fragile now. The employees who had laughed and cheered Monday morning kept their eyes down, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Malik positioned himself in the center of the area, the same spot where coffee had been poured over his head, the same space where Grant had declared him worthless in front of dozens of witnesses. "Thank you all for gathering here," Malik began, his voice carrying clearly across the crowded space. "This morning's board meeting produced important decisions that affect everyone in this company." The silence was complete. Even the coffee machines had stopped their usual background hum. "The independent audit requested during my first week has concluded. The investigation revealed systematic falsification of financial records, destruction of HR complaint documentation, and deliberate manipulation of employee evaluations to support personal retaliation." Grant's face went pale, but he remained silent. "Effective immediately, Grant Mercer is terminated for cause. His executive privileges are canceled. The documented evidence of financial falsification and record destruction has been referred for legal review." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several of Grant's supporters stepped away from him instinctively. Additionally, managers who knowingly assisted in retaliatory actions against employees will lose supervisory authority pending formal disciplinary proceedings. Those investigations will be handled by our new Chief People and Compliance Officer. Malik turned toward Denise. "Denise Walker is promoted immediately with independent board access and full authority to investigate workplace misconduct without executive interference." Denise nodded, her face serious but determined. The same woman who had quietly preserved complaint numbers was now empowered to expose the entire system of retaliation. For employees who participated in Monday's incident through laughter or encouragement, but did not actively engage in harassment, accountability training will be required rather than termination. This company needs people who understand their mistakes, not convenient scapegoats. Relief showed on several faces. The workers who had simply followed Grant's lead were being given a chance to prove their commitment to change. Performance evaluations damaged through retaliation will be restored to their accurate assessments. Back pay will be authorized for verified unpaid hours. Protected reporting channels are being established so interns and junior workers can address concerns without fear of punishment. The crowd listened intently as Malik outlined systematic reforms designed to prevent the abuse they had witnessed or enabled. Evelyn Price has confirmed that our lender accepted the corrected financial package. Halcyon's credit facility has been renewed based on accurate projections rather than falsified numbers. Grant finally spoke, his voice bitter. "You're destroying everything I built here. You built a system where powerful people could humiliate others without consequences," Malik replied calmly. "That system is being dismantled permanently." The employees who had cheered Grant's cruelty 4 days earlier now watched their former leader being escorted toward the exit by security. His executive access badge was surrendered at the reception desk. His parking privileges were revoked. His company phone was collected. The same coffee area where Grant had demonstrated his power through humiliation became the place where his authority officially ended. Malik walked to the coffee station, where a fresh cup waited beside the machine. The staff remained silent, watching him carefully. Their laughter and applause from Monday morning had been replaced by nervous attention. He lifted the cup slowly, steam rising from the dark liquid. The gesture was deliberate, symbolic. The same action that had preceded his humiliation was now marking his permanent victory. "Nobody working here will ever have to earn dignity again,"